Hello, and welcome to our first edition of Show Me MONGA, a video podcast for the Missouri National Guard Association. We hope to use this platform to help you learn more about our association and the people who help make our association great. Today, I want to introduce Lieutenant Colonel / Mr. Chris Powers, the president of our association. Chris took office in April of 2023. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, sir. Hey, thank you for having me.
No, it's great. And so we'll keep this relatively short, but just got some questions I'd like to ask. And first, it's always good just to know something about you. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So first off, thanks for doing this. I think this is going to be a great way for us to reach out to our members, and really appreciate you taking on a leadership role, especially on the technology side, and kind of helping us get through this. But briefly about me, again, Chris Powers, grew up on a small dairy farm in South Central Missouri. Joined the Guard right out of high school as an E1 without anything on my collar at all. Went to basic training in AIT and then jumped over, very fortunate to have been selected to attend college at College of the Ozarks, and attended there as an SMP until 9/11 when our country was attacked. That was our first taste of terrorism. And me and two of my colleagues had a pretty stark decision to make. We had just maybe 2 weeks earlier signed an ROTC contract to become lieutenants. And we found out that our home unit, the 1138th Military Police Company, which was then headquartered out of West Plains with a detachment in Springfield, was tapped to deploy. And so as coincidence would have it, then Captain Larry Crowder, who's the predecessor as the executive director for our association, was the commander of the unit, and we all elected to deploy. So we ripped up our contracts, deployed under Operation Noble Eagle, and then returned to college after our year of deployment and finished out school. And so that was a really great experience as an enlisted member of a unit, and really my first exposure to how well a command team can work together for the benefit of the troops in that unit. So ended up graduating in 2004. Met my wife in 2003, and went on to law school at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. So right now I serve in the National Guard, specifically the 35th Infantry Division over in Leavenworth, a unit that you're quite familiar with, sir. Yeah, I'm the protection chief over there. And then when I'm not serving in uniform, again, I practice law, specifically real estate litigation and dealing with title cases, most specifically. My wife and I have been married now for 19 years. We've only got two at home, a senior and a sophomore, Chase and Madison. And so that's just a little bit about me, sir.
No, that's awesome. And now I know that you have Larry Crowder to blame for you being where you are now.
Yes, sir.
Or maybe you did it in spite of. I don't know.
He has some stories. I'm sure he'd be willing to share with you.
I bet he does, and he can be bought. That's for sure. So what inspired you to volunteer to serve as president of the Missouri National Guard Association?
A couple different things, I guess, on that question. I appreciate that question. I've really always been involved in the Guard Association, at least as an officer. In the old days when you first join a unit, I'm sure you probably remember this, and you might have been a part of the reason for it. But when you would sit down for your initial counseling with both your rater and your senior rater, there was a heavy conversation around being an active member of veterans groups, and specifically the association. And so this was something that in my generation, as we were growing up as lieutenants, that it was just kind of commonplace that you become a member and you become a participant to the degree that you can in the association. So, but specifically, those are that was the basis for my joining. But really, what got me involved were the networking opportunities and the legislative benefits. Those were the two that hooked me into becoming a life member and serving in more varied capacities, including the capacity here as the association president. So I want to briefly just give you an example of both of those. So
sure.
I appreciate that. So on the networking side, really this is really a message to our non-commissioned officer corps and our new lieutenants. there are very few ways, especially as an M-Day officer or an NCO, to really engage with your senior leaders, your senior rater, your rater through the training year. You've got the training briefs that you're up behind a podium. You've got some senior rater battlefield circulation when they're coming and visiting units, but really there isn't an opportunity to engage them in a more relaxed capacity, and that's what the association really did for me. I can tell you, I remember being very eager to deploy as the commander of my hometown unit, that one that I actually deployed with as an E4, when that unit was slated to deploy in 2009. I was at the time serving as the executive officer of the 2175th under then Captain Lindsay Decker, now the brigade commander over at the 35th MP Brigade. And Colonel Decker encouraged me, she said, I know that your battalion commander of that unit is going to be at the conference this year, so you might get down there and try to have a conversation with her. And so I took that advice, and as luck would have it, I ended up sitting right beside then Lieutenant Colonel Martin, now retired Brigadier General Sharon Martin, whom I'd never met before.
Oh, wow.
And it was now looking back, it's surreal, and I'm realizing, frankly, how old I'm getting. But I remember exactly where I was.
You're not old. Don't even go there.
I figured I'd get that. But I remember sitting by her and exactly where I was in the conference room in Branson when she asked me what my short-term and midterm kind of ambitions were. And I thought that this is my only opportunity I'm going to get. And so I told her about the research I'd done on the unit, and I knew that Captain Scott Weitzel, who was the unit commander, was rotating out, and that there would soon be a vacancy in that unit. And I said, if the Guard would see it fit for me to serve in that capacity, I'm ready and willing to go, and I would really appreciate that opportunity. Just a couple months later, the Spring Career Management Board happens, and the results are published, and I'm getting letters of congratulations that I'm the unit commander for the 1138th, and we're deploying in 3 months. And so that was my first engagement in how being a member of the association and being given those opportunities to engage with my senior leaders can work. And I'll make the disclaimer that things rarely work out this way. That was a matter of fate and a matter of being at the right time, the right place, having conversations with the right people. But I'm 100% confident that if I weren't there, I would have been nowhere in the conversation at all. And so that's kind of the first part about why I really the hook behind why I joined.
Yeah. So if I may just to caveat into that, that's something when I talk to young soldiers, it's not that being in the association is going to put you in those great positions. It's that you're going to meet the people who are making those decisions, and just, they're now putting a name with a face. They know you, they've met you. You'll still come up in your OML list and your different rankings. You still have to have the schools, you still have to have all these other things, but that's the piece sometimes that can throw you over the top when everything else is equal, because you've met that person. So
yes, sir.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. Sorry.
No,
that's exactly. I appreciate you emphasizing that point, because that's the truth of it.
Yeah.
So the second story briefly I'll share, and again, I mentioned networking and the legislative impact. So on the legislative side, I've been able to witness firsthand how the association can affect positive change, and really that's what's made me the most excited about being the president. Back in 2011, I caught wind that a soldier that I had deployed with, and I was actually an enlisted soldier with, was kind of in dire straits financially, and I became kind of fearful that he might be mixed up in something, or there was something bad going on. And so I called him just to try to figure out what was going on, and pretty quickly in short order told me that he was going upside down in debt as a result of having to pay tuition for his kids to attend a public high school down in Southwest Missouri. It turned out that this soldier, and I actually talked to him before doing this podcast. I'm not going to share his name, but I wanted to at least kind of talk through his situation. But you'll remember the EF5 tornado that ripped through Joplin in Jasper County back in 2011.
Know it well.
And so, and a lot of Guard deployed down there. This soldier was on active duty orders when that happened, and his family, because that tornado destroyed his home, he basically sent his kids over to grandma's house to attend school from her house. Now, she was outside of the school district that his kids were going to, and they elected to go ahead and send them to the school district that they had been going to, because that was just one more change that they didn't need while he was in a deployed status. The consequence of that was, since they weren't domiciled at grandma's place, the school was actually charging them out of district tuition, and I think it was like $8,000 per kid per semester or something like that. Maybe it was per year. But yeah. It was crazy. And so that struck a nerve with me, and as luck would have it, again, kind of a matter of fate, a close friend of mine was serving, who I graduated college with, was serving then in the Missouri legislature, and I called them and asked, is there a way of addressing this legislatively? And so after this process, kind of the legislative process kicked off, my colleague introduced this bill that would amend, I think it was Chapter 167 of the code, to permit children of guardsmen who are attending school where their family support is located would not have to pay tuition, even though they're not domiciled there. And so that was the legislation that went forward. And then I was kind of thrust into the process. I didn't realize I was going to have to go testify in front of a committee, and that's really where the association comes in. And so I'm sitting there getting ready to testify, quite nervous, with this other guardman who had been directly impacted by this tweak that needed to be done in the legislation here. And I think it was Joel Denny, the executive director of MONGA then. I think that would have been, I'm almost confident that it was him. He was sitting beside me, and I don't know if it was my haircut or what, but he said, are you here supporting a bill? Because this is a Veterans Committee hearing. And I said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, can you give me just the elevator pitch on what it's about? And I said, yes, sir. And I kind of gave him about what I gave you just now. Yeah. And he whispered over to this guy on his left, who I later found out was Larry Kay, retired Brigadier General Larry Kay, who was then serving as the Missouri Veterans Commission director. Right. And so as the bill comes up, I end up testifying for it. The soldier impacted testifies for it. And then Joel sits there and says, on behalf of the 10,000 members in the National Guard and my role as the association, we'd like to thrust our support behind this bill. And then Larry Kay did the exact same thing, and it ended up passing through committee unanimously. Awesome. Governor Nixon signed it in January of 2012. And that's the one thing I've got in my office there in Leavenworth, Kansas, is the governor's pen that he used in signing that legislation into law. And still to this day, that was probably the top one or two conversations I've ever had with a guardsman, is being able to call that soldier and tell him, hey, that bill you testified for passed, and soldiers that are situated like you won't have to go through that again. So a really great impact. And again, that kind of further emboldened my responsibility to the association, and kind of things took off from there.
Sure. Well, you kind of talked about it, but is there anything else you want to say about why the association is important?
I'll just tell you very briefly, since I kind of talked a lot there. Yeah. Just three big buckets, I guess I would keep in mind for those considering joining, or those who've been around and are interested in further opportunities. The first there that I mentioned was the advocacy, representation, and legislative influence. That everything I talked about there was state legislative influence, but we also have folks that serve on committees with the National Guard Association of the United States, and they're forwarding federal legislation, and also the enlisted ENGAS, the Enlisted Guard Association. They also support legislation at the federal, state, and local level. So that's one. The second is professional development. Again, I touched on this already, the networking opportunities, but beyond that, we are starting to offer some level of training. We've got scholarships, we've got resources that help Guard members, and then we've got our life insurance program that's a supplement to SGLI, which is all big parts of kind of that part of it. And then again, I mentioned unity and camaraderie with just the feeling when you're at those association conferences that it's essentially a big family reunion. And I know that you know this, sir, but anytime I go to those, you're touching out to folks that you haven't seen maybe 5-10 years that you used to serve in a unit with, and it's like a homecoming.
It is.
And it's a really great experience. And to that point, our conference is coming up in April of next year, and it's going to be in Columbia, which is centrally located. So I'm hopeful that a lot of those that maybe haven't been out to the conference for a while will get back involved and join us there.
Right, 11 to 13 April.
Yes,
It'll
sir.
be good. So what has the association done to support our membership in the Missouri National Guard as a whole?
So I talked a little bit about that in some of my previous discussion, but I'll give just a sampling of how those that might not be super familiar with MONGA, some of the recent accomplishments we've had that kind of demonstrate the support. So one of the things that we do is advocate for educational benefits for our members. This has kind of really been a big thing. Even most recently, as like the University of Missouri, with their almost doubling of tuition rates, we're looking at ways of restoring our tuition assistant benefits to our soldiers, which I'll talk about a little bit. But beyond that, I just a couple weekends ago, I was down at Columbia College. We had negotiated with them a memorandum of agreement, and a lot of the colleges throughout the Midwest are looking to partner with the Guard. And so this was an opportunity where we engaged them, and they ended up giving us a 15% tuition discount for both online and in-seat curriculum for Guard members and their family. Also give us a direct line of additional financial aid, scholarships, tuition assistance. They're not charging soldiers for books. They're not charging soldiers for application fees. They're offering free coaching and career mapping. I mean, it's incredible what they've agreed to do for us. And that's based on our long-term corporate sponsorship relationship that we've cultured with them. And so that's one example.
Right. And Columbia College, they've been a long-standing partner of the Missouri National Guard Association. They were one of the first. I think they actually were with another institution that doesn't really exist anymore. So they're really our only member from Truman's Battery D, which is that highest level sponsorship. So great partner.
They are. Yeah. Another great partner, since we're talking about that, I was going to mention is USAA. And so as it relates to college benefits, USAA annually provides this $1,000 scholarship, and they've agreed to do that this year, and to a member of the Guard. And we've also approved internally another $4,000 in scholarships for our members and their dependents. And so one of the things I would mention is that our scholarships committee chair is Rebecca Peters, and she'll be soon publishing our application process, I think in December.
Yes.
And so Guard members or association members should be looking out for that here soon.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm supposed to be working on, so I'll get after that.
Yeah. The one thing I would also mention lastly is we're making a legislative push this year really in support of the National Guard. The Guard is coming up with an initiative. I think they're calling it loosely the Missouri Guard GI Bill. And if it's approved, it's supposed to furnish tuition and fee waivers, or I think it's grants for undergraduate courses at Missouri post-secondary education institutions. And so this is in, I think, direct response to the University of Missouri escalating their tuition rates from, I think it was $340 per credit hour to, I think, almost $700. And so this will give us the ability to further our commitment to tuition assistance, and we'll be supporting that legislation this upcoming cycle. So those are just a couple of examples. Again,
Sure.
I mentioned earlier the supplemental life insurance that we offer.
Yep.
There's a ton of different opportunities that we foster with these corporate sponsorships and others.
Oh, I agree. So moving on, but heavily related, can you highlight the key issues and challenges that you believe the Missouri National Guard Association is currently facing?
So, we're a nonprofit military organization. And so, you have kind of the common challenges that are associated with that. And I guess I would categorize them in 4 different ways. The first is association participation, which you and I know much about. The second is kind of the financial and corporate partnership piece of that, and sustainability and growth in that area. The third area is governance and leadership. And then finally, and this, I think this podcast speaks directly to it, is technological innovation as an organization. So with the association participation, we're really starting to trend in the right direction. Many of our senior command teams have been involved very heavily with MONGA in the past. I'm thinking about Scott Ratcliffe over at 70 Troop Command, Colonel Decker, of course, 35th MP Brigade, and many like them who have been very integrally involved in the past. And we're starting to see, their influence with their groups joining or renewing memberships in MONGA. But we have a lot of work to do. I mean, we're doing good in representing our national conferences. I think, I was interested to find out that I think we doubled our participation at both NAUGUS and INGUS this year, which is a big deal. But by and large, as a percentage, we're still very low in comparison to some of our competing states. And so getting that message back out there about participating in the association and becoming not just a member, but an active partner with us moving forward, that's always going to be a challenge with a nonprofit, and because you're asking people for additional time beyond their traditional Guard responsibilities. So I get it, but it is important for us. The second thing is I would mention, again, the financial sustainability. Again, we're doing a lot better now than we've done in the past, and we're growing existing relationships and developing new ones. I was just kind of looking at our website today, and our new relationship, or our reinvigorated relationship with Columbia College, with Boeing, with Mantis, Western Governors, USAA, and all the others. We're just yeah. I mean, there's a ton of them, and so that it's good, but we continue to work and try to grow those relationships.
Right.
Third area I mentioned very briefly was governance and leadership. The nice thing is, for the first time in several years, we've assembled a full board of directors. We have very eager committee leads. We've got Conrad Marin from the 131st heading up our planning conference for our April conference. We got Rebecca Peters, I mentioned, on scholarships, Colonel Ratcliffe, commander of 7th Troop Command, on nominations, a very talented Brett Kirk from the Infantry Regiment. And he's doing he's working on our resolutions committee, doing an outstanding job there. And having said that, we constantly need new blood to bring fresh perspectives and ideas. And so if those that have been on, kind of on the membership side for a long time feel the capacity to serve, we've got plenty of vacancies coming up this next spring, and we'd be happy to have you join us.
Yeah, always stronger together. We can get more people. That's always a good thing.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I guess just briefly, I'll mention lastly, because we're developing an app now, I should mention that, and this is one of the benefits of, not to brag on you too much, sir, but the nice thing about having you on board is, many don't know this, and I was fortunate to find out, but you were the CIO of one of the largest school districts in the state. And so, I mean, if you log into our website, you've seen tremendous change in the last 6 months. And I
don't know about tremendous, but there has been change.
Well, I've seen the backside work on it.
Okay.
And so I know what's gone into it, but, and we're making these incremental, nothing's going to change overnight, but we're working in the right direction. And I think the app is the next piece of that. So that we can reach people on their smartphones more conveniently, and we can use the tools within our organizations on the Guard side. So those are kind of the 4 areas I would mention that often, we struggle with, but we're working to get against.
No, I agree. And on the app, I think there's some exciting things coming. I've got another meeting with them next week. So exciting things coming. What they see now in the app is just that foundational portion. We'll grow from there.
Yes, sir.
So, Chris, I know you said earlier that you were old, or something to that effect, which I try not to take that personally. You've been in the National Guard for about 2 decades, and I'd like to hear, what have you learned about being a leader, and what advice would you give to your young officers and NCOs as they start their careers and their path in the National Guard?
I'm sometimes long-winded. I go on for days here, but I'll try to hit on just, a couple nuggets that I've taken away. I mean, all of us as leaders have those kind of common things that continue to strike us throughout our careers. And I'll try not to be a super cliche here, but I guess the first one is that whether you're an E1 or an O5, being successful means being adaptable, embracing discomfort and change, and really being willing to fail and fail forward. I don't want to talk about basic training stories, but I remember hearing from an E5 in the first unit I served in. He constantly talked about embracing the suck, and I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't sure what that term meant, but in basic training, I remember I went in late 1999, ended up graduating, I think, in May of 2000. And it was a particularly harsh winter. We had a lot of freezing rain that winter, generally just miserable weather conditions. Anytime we go to the field, it did suck. I remember probably a month in, I was in the front leaning rest outside the barracks. Of course, we were getting smoked for some reason, who knows? And it was freezing rain out. And I remember it was maybe I was delirious, but I started just kind of laughing, and thinking, how bad it sucked. But I just became comfortable with it, frankly.
It's a great recruiting line.
Yeah. So, but that was my first experience. And so I thought, and it's carried me through,
Sure.
If you're on patrol for 14 hours in a combat zone, embrace it. Somebody's got it worse out there.
Right.
You're doing civil disturbance and you've been on the skirmish line for several hours, and, you got a ton of gear. Your shoulders feel like they're going to break, and protesters are screaming at you in your face after you just took off from your civilian work to join in on the emergency. It sucks, but embrace it. Someone out there has it worse than you do. Yeah. And so that's kind of the first point is just become adaptable and learn to enjoy the change and enjoy the times that you're challenged, because frankly, it's going to serve you well and you're going to be better for it.
I often tell people, and at first I thought I was being obnoxious, which I wasn't meaning to be, but I've had people say, "Oh, wasn't today a horrible day?" And I just look at them and I say, well, you know what? No one's shooting at us. Yeah. And as soon as I said that the first time, the response, because when I said it, I'm like, I shouldn't have said that. People are like, you're exactly right. I need to refocus. And that's all part of that embracing the suck. Somebody's got it worse.
Yeah. And honestly, being the optimist in the group is contagious. Everyone's walked into maybe a squad or a platoon and it just didn't have a good vibe, but you get that one soldier or NCO that comes in with a very optimistic attitude, and it changes the whole culture of the unit many times. So just being optimistic in those times of change as well.
Yeah, agreed.
The other one I'll hit on is especially once you get out of kind of the company ranks, I didn't realize this when I joined as an officer, but once you get out of the company ranks, you're in this constant churn between staff and command assignments. And some people really are geared toward those staff assignments, and others are just trying to bide their time until they get back into command. And so it's true of both the officer and the NCO side. And so it's something that many young officers and NCOs aren't aware of, that they're going to go through this process, and that they're much less prepared for it. And so, my advice there, and I think it's important, especially to those company grade personnel, is, once you're in those new assignments that you're not comfortable with, is, figure out your role as quickly as you can, figure out, your team, what the procedures are that need to stay because they work, and which ones need to be modified so that they work better. And then to study those tactical and planning, SOPs, and then just be the best darn staff officer and NCO that you can in that environment. It's just something that I wasn't prepared for as, going in, I think, as a battalion S4 or whatever my first staff role was. But learning those relationships and learning those roles so that when you do go back into company command, or maybe into a key development assignment as an XO, you know how to leverage different people on those staffs, and you're a better, well-rounded NCO or officer because of it.
Yeah, no, great point. So thanks for that, Chris. As we wrap up the interview, what do you want the members of our association to know?
So I want you to know that I want you on our team. First off, whether you're an E1 or an 08 or a retiree even, we need you on our association. our collective voice is much more powerful when we're speaking in unison. That's true of anything in life. And we have a myriad of opportunities really where you can get involved. You can help us with planning our conferences. You can help us review scholarships. You can help us by serving as a board member. You can join the team and travel out to a national association to represent Missouri in that regard. There are just a number of opportunities that are diverse and expansive, and we need you on our team. So that would be my closing message.
That's really good. And yes, we are definitely better with more people working on the team together. So Chris, thank you for taking the time to help with this inaugural podcast, Show Me MONGA. I appreciate your willingness to serve both the Missouri National Guard and the Missouri National Guard Association. We are definitely better together, and you are making our association stronger. So thank you for that. Thank you for putting up with the technical issues as we try to figure this out. We'll get better as we go. I already know changes I want to make just from what I did here today. So, and to all our listeners, viewers, thanks for joining us. Please email me at mongahelpsyou@gmail.com if you have topics you would like covered in a future podcast or you have questions about the association. I hope you all have a great day, and please do join up. Go to mongaonline.com and register and become a member. Thank you.